I first started coming here in 1977. My wife and I got married on May 15th and had just started bird watching and thought we would visit Malheur, and it happened to be the perfect time of the year. It was a great birding year and it was like a kid in a candy store.
The lake was traditionally one of the most important stopovers in the Pacific Flyway, and it used to produce large amounts of waterfowl, ducks, swans, geese, pelicans.
Malheur is probably the single best place to bird in Oregon. It's one of the best places in the western United States. It's one of the crown jewels, I would say, of the refuge system because of the diversity of habitat.
But it's not now. Well, after the introduction of the carp, they pretty much destroyed the lake. Now it's not capable of producing anywhere near the number of birds that it used to. Production is down probably to about 7%.
Our primary objective at the refuge today is to fix our aquatic health. And the main issue we have with our aquatic health in our wetlands, and Malheur Lake in particular, is invasive common carp.
Carp were introduced in the 1920s to this Harney Basin. They started noticing carp as a problem in the early 1950s on the refuge. And the carp came in and they decimated the submerged aquatic vegetation. And the submerged aquatic vegetation is what our migratory waterfowl and birds are eating. So they pretty much decimated the grocery store out there.
Malheur Lake isn't a lake, it's a marsh. It should have emergent vegetation all over it. It should be green. It should have reeds and cattails, and there should be ducks and waterfowl nesting and breeding all over it. And it's not, it's open water because the carp get in there and they stir up the bottom and it becomes turbid. You don't get the emergent vegetation and they don't have the food. The waterfowl don't have the food they need and they can't breed.
We're about a third of the way from the southern shore to the north shore on Malheur Lake. You're looking back towards the Turn Island and headquarters. This area is devoid of life for the most part. The carp have muddied the water so bad that photosynthesis can't occur out here. We're in about 3 feet of water right now, but you can only see about a ½ inch below the surface of the water because of the stirred up sediment.
Malheur Lake is part of what is known as called the Sonic, which is the Southern Oregon and Northeastern California wetlands. It includes the Klamath Basin and the Warner Valley wetlands, and then the Harney Basin where we're at right now. Those wetlands are the only place that a lot of migratory waterfowl and water birds have to go during the spring migration.
Virtually all of the waterfowl that go along the Pacific Flyway have to go through one of those 3 refuges.
The Sonic area is like a hub. It's like Denver International Airport. Birds come into this area from all over the southern U.S., stage in this area during the spring, and then disperse again through the Canadian provinces, the Dakotas, up into Alaska.
If those refuges, any significant impact on any one of those refuges affects people from Alaska all the way down to Mexico. Duck hunters, bird watchers, subsistence hunters in Alaska, this is not just a Southeast Oregon or an Oregon problem. This is an entire Pacific Flyway, California, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, Alaska problem.
For a long time, we didn't even talk about Malheur Lake because it was such a big problem, so complex, and we didn't have the relationships in place that would be necessary to actually work through the issue out there.
For many years, a lot of groups and interests out there have been working against each other. The Fish and Wildlife Service really didn't want to talk about carp at the beginning of their planning process because I think they really believed it was not a solvable problem. But when they brought all these stakeholders into the room together to talk about the refuge issues, it was literally the elephant in the room or the carp in the bathtub, the big single issue, and everybody said, we're crazy if we're not talking about carp.
And it's that diverse group of partners that is enabling us to even address the lake. And so we haven't had this opportunity in the past. And so we're at kind of a unique point in time where we have a lot of outside partnerships really focused on helping move this thing forward. And so it's kind of an exciting period for the refuge.
Well, the problem here is huge. We are talking about probably millions of fish. This is not a hook and line solution. This is not, you can shoot them with bows and arrows, but you could be out there until the cows come home. And this is going to require an industrial approach to fish removal. A commercial test fishery would tell us about the feasibility of making commercial use of this, being able to catch them, but also bring us some important information from a science standpoint that help us quantify the size of the population.
So what they were doing was setting a net, a purse type net set, and then they surround a school of carp with that net, and then they slowly bring it back in and draw it tight, and then kind of confine those carp in that net. And then they transfer those carp from the net into a boat, and then they come to this site here where we load them into trucks, and then we're taking them to a processing site where we're taking scientific data from them before we complete the project.
The data that I'm collecting is length of the fish, weight of the fish, sex, and so it's all part of population dynamics to understand our fish better.
I'm not really keen on cleaning fish at all, but I have no affinity for carp. I think they're just a nasty little fish, so I think it's a good thing for them not to be around.
And this is a feasibility study where it's going to answer some questions. Is the lake nettable or is the bottom full of snags? And we've determined that the lake is nettable. There's an awful lot of fish in this lake, so let's say like there's 25 million pounds, and there could be double that. That's an awful lot of fish. You just can't simply pay to have them dumped in the desert, and besides that, it would be a sin to waste that kind of a protein source, and there's people out there that are hungry, and the things taste really good. They have a really good flavor, and we cook some up for the Refuge staff here and stuff, and we just need a place to go with these carp, and I know they're good food. The one good thing is we can cover an awful lot of water out here. We get some radio telemetry in these fish, we can pin them down. I think we could absolutely wipe them out, but it's a problem that has a lot of different layers. It isn't like we're the solution, we're just a piece of the puzzle.
In order to bring the waterbird populations back to Malheur Lake, it's going to take a combination of approaches, one of which may be the commercial harvest that we're testing right now.
What we're dealing with is an issue, or our carp issue, at a scale that's never been done anywhere else in the world. And we are interacting with some of the world-leading experts on common carp control.
They're throwing a lot of good science at it. They're working on producing best scientific practices to throw at the problem, and I think it's going to pay off.
We are making progress. We've learned more about this carp population in the last 4 or 5 years than we've known in the last 50. And so just understanding how that population out there works, that's really going to help us develop successful strategies to manage the population. This is something bigger than the Fish and Wildlife Service can solve by itself. Working with commercial fishermen and maybe commercial fish processors and those types of folks are all going to be important in how we approach long-term solutions for the lake.
It's going to be an ongoing management problem and challenge to keep the carp populations below a threshold below which the vegetation will respond and provide the resources for the birds to come back.
Love this country and have been concerned about this area, and it's something that a lot of people don't know about, and so they need to know, and data is important. And so when you have factual data to explain to the public, hopefully more people will become interested and we can come up with a viable solution to rescuing the refuge for the birds and improving the whole ecosystem for the Malheur Wildlife Refuge.
When you look across the state of Oregon, this is the one place there's probably greater potential for ecological uplift, ecological gains here than there is per dollar spent anywhere in Oregon.
Perhaps I'm an optimist, but I think it can be done within a handful or handfuls of years, certainly within my career, and hopefully a lot sooner.
Right now the Klamath is out of water. Malheur Lake is out of food because it doesn't have emergent vegetation. If these 3 refuges go, it destroys the waterfowl populations along the Pacific Flyway. And that will cause a lot of suffering for a lot of people.
It's a piece of my heart. So I want to solve this problem, and I have a real strong passion to solve the problem, and I even dream about it.